A couple of years ago, I went through a phase where I became weirdly obsessed with people who always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. You know exactly the type I'm talking about. They somehow hear about the perfect job before it's ever posted online, meet the right business partner by accident, or end up investing in something years before everyone else catches on. Every time I'd hear another story like that, I'd think the same thing. Some people are just lucky. It was a simple explanation, and honestly, it made me feel better because if luck was something you were born with, then there wasn't much I could do about it anyway. Then, something happened that completely changed how I looked at it. And the funny part is that it didn't feel important at all while it was happening. I was working from a cafe one afternoon because I'd convinced myself I was more productive there than at home. In reality, I'd probably spent more time looking out the window than actually working. The guy sitting next to me looked like he was in his 60s, wearing an old fleece jacket that had definitely seen better days, and every 15 minutes his phone would ring. Each call lasted less than a minute. He'd smile, answer whatever question someone had, hang up, and go back to reading his newspaper like nothing had happened. After the fourth phone call, I couldn't help myself. I joked that he seemed more popular than anyone I knew. He laughed, folded his newspaper, and said, "Nah, people just know they can call me." We started talking, and it turned out he'd spent most of his career helping small companies solve problems. Nothing glamorous, nothing you'd ever see in a documentary, but over 40 years, he'd met thousands of people who trusted him enough to keep his number. Right before he left, he picked up his coffee cup, looked back at me, and said something that stuck with me far longer than I expected. People think I've been lucky my whole life. They don't realize I've spent 40 years making it easy for luck to find me. He wasn't trying to teach me anything. It wasn't one of those perfect movie moments where the old wise man changes someone's life. He just said it casually and walked out the door. But I kept thinking about it on the drive home because I'd spent years doing the exact opposite. I'd avoid talking to strangers, convince myself networking was fake, stay inside because I had work to do, and somehow expect interesting opportunities to appear anyway. Once I started paying attention, I noticed the same pattern everywhere. One of my friends is the kind of person everyone calls lucky because opportunities seem to fall into his lap. A few months ago, someone mentioned how unbelievable it was that he'd landed a remote job earning almost twice what he made before. They talked about it like he'd won the lottery. What nobody in that conversation knew was that for almost a year, he'd been waking up an hour before work to build tiny coding projects that nobody used. We'd meet on Friday evenings, and he'd laugh about how he'd spent another week building something that got exactly 12 visitors, 10 of which were probably himself refreshing the page. Most people would have stopped after a month because there were no results, but he kept posting them online anyway. One of those forgotten projects eventually got noticed by someone looking for a developer, and that single email completely changed his career. Everyone remembers the email. Nobody remembers the 300 mornings that came before it. I realized that's probably why luck looks so magical from the outside. We only ever see the final chapter of someone else's story. We never see the hundreds of boring days where absolutely nothing happened, where they questioned themselves, considered giving up, and wondered whether any of it was worth the effort. There's another memory that comes back to me every now and then because it was so ordinary at the time. I was waiting for a delayed train, and there was a guy standing next to me, reading a book I'd wanted to buy for months. Normally, I'd have looked at the cover, thought, "That's cool," and gone back to staring at my phone. But for whatever reason, I asked him whether it was actually worth reading. We ended up talking for 20 minutes about books, work, and why both of us were trying to spend less time on social media. We exchanged numbers because we happened to work in similar industries. Nothing happened after that, at least not immediately. Almost 8 months later, he messaged me asking if I knew anyone who could help with a project. I couldn't, but we grabbed coffee anyway, And through him, I ended up meeting two other people who completely changed how I thought about building things online. If you only heard the ending, you'd say, I got lucky because I happened to meet the right person at a train station. What you'd never know is that the only reason it happened was because I asked one completely unnecessary question instead of looking at my phone for 20 minutes. I think that's what I've misunderstood for most of my life. I used to imagine luck as this invisible force that randomly picked people, but now it feels more like probability. Every conversation, every project, every event you almost skip, every message you finally send, they're all tiny bets. Most of them lead nowhere, and that's exactly why people stop making them. The lucky people don't make better bets, they simply make more of them. I remember speaking to someone who owned a successful business, and I asked him how he met the partner he'd been working with for almost 15 years. I expected some incredible story. Instead, he shrugged and said, honestly, he was sitting next to me because every other seat was taken. We both laughed, but then he added something interesting. If I'd left 5 minutes earlier because I was impatient, we'd never have met. That sentence stuck with me because life seems to be full of moments like that. Tiny decisions that feel completely meaningless until years later when you realize they quietly changed everything. I also noticed that the people who seem lucky are usually the most curious people in the room. They ask questions without worrying about sounding stupid. They'll message someone they admire even if there's a 99% chance they never get a reply. They'll go to an event alone because they'd rather be uncomfortable for an evening than spend another year wondering what might have happened if they'd gone. Most of those attempts don't work. That's the part nobody posts online. Nobody uploads a video called, I sent 20 emails and 19 people ignored me. Nobody tells you about the networking event where they stood awkwardly holding the same drink for an hour because they didn't know anyone. Nobody talks about the side project that earned exactly €0. But those invisible moments are usually the price of the visible opportunities everyone calls luck. I caught myself making the same mistake not that long ago. I saw someone around my age doing incredibly well online and immediately thought they'd been in the right place at the right time. Then I scrolled back to their oldest posts. They'd been uploading consistently for almost 4 years before anything took off. 4 years of videos barely anyone watched, comments from the same 5 people, and months where it probably felt like they were talking to themselves. When success finally arrived, the internet called them an overnight success. It's funny how quickly we erase the years that don't make a good headline. The more I think about it, the less I believe lucky people are actually lucky. I think they're simply the people who keep placing themselves where something good could happen, even after dozens of attempts that lead nowhere. They keep showing up, keep starting conversations, keep building things nobody asked for yet, and eventually, probability starts working in their favor. So if you've ever looked at someone else's life and thought they just got all the lucky breaks, remember that you're almost certainly comparing the final scene of their story with the first chapter of your own. You didn't see the mornings where they questioned everything, the projects that quietly failed, the invitations they almost declined, or the conversations that seemed completely pointless at the time. Maybe luck isn't a lightning strike after all. Maybe it's what slowly grows around people who keep giving the world chances to surprise them. And one day, after enough ordinary moments that nobody else notices, it suddenly looks like everything worked out perfectly. From the outside, people will probably call it luck. You'll know it was simply the result of showing up long enough for luck to finally know where to find you.